Welcome to the Mavs Fans for Life podcast. I am Landon Thomas, joined by my co-host Shahnavaz Makhani. Shahnavaz, the Mavericks are the hottest team in the league right now.
Yes, sir.
Yes, they are. We're going to be talking about it. The Mavericks, just the win streak that they're on. Not even the win streak that they're on. What is it, 6 games? How they're playing in totality of the last 11 games. I mean, if they won that Heat game, the Mavericks would be the most talked about team in the league. And they should be right now, honestly. And then we'll talk about Luka Dončić finding his rhythm. He's back. Luka is back to being Luka, and that just takes the Mavericks to the next level. So, Shahnavaz, give me one word to describe this run that the Mavericks are currently on, and what is your thoughts on this team right now?
Ooh, let me come back to the one word because I got to think about that.
I like putting you on the spot.
I know. You love doing it. No, I mean, you said it. They're the hottest team in the league. They're arguably outside of what Cleveland and Boston. Maybe they're probably the best team in the West at this point. I mean, if you look at all the cohesive pieces, and Jason Kidd talked about it, that you're finally starting to see what they built in the offseason, right? This was what Nico Harrison and the front office were trying to do, was trying to surround your 2 star players with key role players that even when there are injuries, anybody can step up. Any one player can step up. Nobody has to take nobody has to be that 35, 40, 50 point, scorer to eke out a win. I mean, you're seeing, 8 or 9 straight games with at least 6 players in double figures, 8 players in double figures against the Wizards. Granted, it is the Wizards, but still, to go 6 deep, 7 deep of guys in double figures, and not just double. I mean, the Hawks game, you had three players scoring over 20, and then Kyrie scoring 30. So you're not just talking about players scoring 10, 12 points. I mean, you're getting legitimate production out of a lot of role players. You're seeing the evolution of Quentin Grimes and how he's fitting in now. Najee Marshall, we've talked about so many times. Spencer Dinwiddie, man, after that Miami game, I mean, the dude was eviscerated, and rightfully so, because he, some really, really poor shots. Jason Kidd obviously didn't, gave him too much of a leash in overtime against Miami, but you've seen Spencer Dinwiddie really turn it on. The Mavericks don't win that Grizzlies game without his effort, the NBA Cup game a couple days ago. So every single person on this team is stepping up when they're asked to. You're seeing the unselfish play of this team, the trust that Luka and Kyrie have with their teammates. And the best part of it is they're doing it without some, obviously the last few games without Klay Thompson. Then you were without Luka Dončić. You're missing Grimes, missed the Hawks game. Guys,
Najee's out.
Najee being out. Guys are missing games, and normally that's a struggle for a lot of teams because you don't have those capable rotation players to come in and take those minutes. But the Mavericks have 10 guys that can step up at any single point in time. We've seen great games from Jaden Hardy too. And the Mavericks we've talked about the depth and how incredible it was. And you're finally starting to reap the benefits of that now. With these games, the Portland game, just unbelievable, from Portland shooting 62% from 3. But
yeah,
the Mavericks don't win that game without Jaden Hardy. The Mavericks don't win that game without contributions from a lot of the role players. So to be able to have to be able to have a roster where anyone can step up at any moment gives other teams fits, because now you can't just hone in on Kyrie and Luka. You've got to defend everybody. And that's when Luka and Kyrie can take over at any single point whenever they want to. And so it poses a matchup problem for every single team that they're going to face the rest of the season. And, we're seeing the consistency now. That's what we've asked for. And now you're starting to see everything mesh together, and it's beautiful to watch.
It really is, and I'm glad you gave Spencer his flowers because he deserves it. I mean, last week we made half the podcast about him. I mean, and in the upcoming Luka return, and he's been incredible. But just going back to Spencer, it's been really great to see, because he talked about it a little bit, just how his reputation has changed in the league since he last left the Mavericks, his last stop, not this stop. Because, he was playing big minutes on every single team. He was playing as a starter. He was playing as a 6th man, or he was just a bona fide role player. So he was always playing valuable minutes. And then, ever since he left the Mavericks after the first time, his role has really changed, where You saw him with the Lakers, and they really didn't even need him. They were just plugging him in as a 3 and D player, which is not even his playing style. So obviously, you know, him coming back and really finding his shot. It seems like he shoots, fire when he plays with the Mavericks, and
Mhm.
everywhere else behind the arc is just average. Is and that shows you the gravity pull that Luka has, and that was even better with Kyrie. So I'm just glad to see Spencer get his confidence and get, back to what he is. He's a great sixth man. He's a great third ball handler, and that's what we saw from him last time he was here. And now he's doing it on a vet min. So I mean, you're getting even more value with him. So I just want to give him his praise, and it's good to see because the Mavericks need it. And you kind of wanted to see it with Hardy. Like you said, Hardy, he is inconsistent because
Yeah.
Hardy will have great games, like you mentioned, and then the rest of and then a couple games after that, he won't really, perform the way that you think he would after a great game. And I guess that comes with age, but because some of his mistakes are just mental mistakes. And Spencer, even though his shot's not going, he makes veteran plays. So it's just something to look towards. But like you said, every single role player has had a great game and has won a game for the
Yeah.
Mavericks. And that's what excites you because now you're seeing Luka come into play, and we'll get into it with the next topic. But you're seeing Clay come back. He's slowly getting his rhythm back, and then when Najee comes back, because we know Exum is going to be back in another month or two.
Mhm.
So this is basically when Najee comes back. This is your team for 1 or 2 months, and if they could stay healthy, I mean, look at the run that they're already on. If they could stay healthy, the sky is the limit. I mean, because you really have back to what everyone thought it was going to be the Celtics, Thunder, and Mavs. But now you see the Cavs joining that. So you really have a fantastic four in the NBA.
Yeah, and this run, the Mavs went from ninth to tied for second in the West. I mean, it just incredible, right? To go on a run like that and take advantage of your opponents, right? If you're playing weaker opponents, take advantage of them
Yes.
and win, right? Win the games you're supposed to win, and you build that confidence, and then you can win games like you did against Memphis. Right, you win those games like you did against Denver prior to the Heat game. So building the way that this roster is constructed, it gives you so many opportunities to play different styles of basketball, to match up with whatever opponent that you're playing. And you talked about, even when you've got guys like Jaden Hardy that are struggling, we've seen him make some really poor passes. We've seen him, the turnovers are clearly a problem, but you've got a guy in Spencer who you can bring in and who does things. Like you said, he's a veteran. He does the same things that Jaden Hardy does, but he's been there and he's done it. And he has the trust of the coaching staff. And now when you don't have to bring Dante Exum back too fast. You didn't have to bring
Good point.
You didn't have to bring Luka back too fast, right? You can let him heal the wrist injury. You can let him work on his shot because he was struggling before, right? When he was playing, he was definitely struggling. And now we've seen when he had pretty, an entire week off of not having to play. Now you're seeing the benefits of him finally, getting back to being who he is. That should be scary for the rest of the league.
It really should. And not, they also, not to diminish this stretch, because, like you said, they did take care of teams they're supposed to. And that's what the beauty of the Mavs is when they beat teams they're supposed to. And when they always struggle, it's like, wait, they lost to the Wizards? Wait, they lost to the Blazers? Wait, but they'll beat the contenders. But now you're seeing, when they're at their best, what we've seen in the last few years, when they're at their best, they're dominating teams they should beat, and then the games when they're playing top teams, they split them. So that's what you want to see with this Mavericks team. And when I was talking about not diminish this stretch, because they also dominated the Knicks, and
Yeah,
and
they did.
and that was a healthy team. And then they dominated the Thunder, and you could say, well, they didn't have their bigs. The Mavericks have been injured since the beginning of the season. They always had a couple rotation players out. So then, because I really want to look at the Knicks game because they beat that team without Luka,
Mm-hmm.
and they dominated that game. So that gives you hope that obviously, they persevere. They find ways to win. And like you said, they don't have to have heavy weight on the shoulders of their two stars. But I still want to, before we get to Luka, I still want to ask you, Shahnavaz, what is that one word?
Man, I was hoping you'd forget. I was hoping I'll get to it. I promise. Speaking of the Knicks game, I think I agree with you. I think the Knicks game was huge, and the reason why is we've seen Dallas struggle against stretch bigs a lot, right? We
Good
saw
point.
Miles Turner. He always plays well against Mavs. It's always a homecoming, but him being able to step out to the
Porzingis,
3-point
all
line,
of them.
Porzingis, being able to shut down Karl Anthony Towns and win the game the way that the Mavs did, they out physicaled the Knicks, which is hard to do when it's a Tom Thibodeau coach team. That should give you a lot of hope going forward, because if the Mavs can play well against stretch bigs, there's not a team in the Western Conference that can beat them.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And I also want to give a shout out to PJ Washington.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, he's kind of like the Iron Man, because he is incredible for the Mavericks. His value is very high. With the Hornets, you really saw him as a scorer. And with the Mavericks, you're seeing him as a do it all player. I mean, he really does it all for this team. He guards the best player. He scores when he has to score. He's an incredible rebounder. And
He
I
is.
feel like that attribute is like lost in the NBA. Oh, he's a great rebound. Because, after Drummond had like 14, 15 a game, people really didn't realize rebounding is a big part of the game. And he's not only just in the right places, like he's pulling out the most acrobatic moves just to get a rebound. And I give him all the props in the world because like you said, Spencer Dinwiddie won that game for the Grizzlies against the Grizzlies, but PJ Washington's three closed the game.
Yes.
Because that was the nail in the coffin.
And his improvement from three has been unbelievable. I mean,
Yeah.
you can see the work that he's put in, and it's, it's always, you always hear in the offseason the players are putting in work and are trying to improve their game and this and that. And, sometimes you really don't notice it, right? It goes unnoticed, and it's sometimes it's the little things. PJ worked hard on his three, not just corner threes. I mean, that three, that was a wing three or top of the key three that he hit to close the game out against the Grizzlies. So to see him improve his game that much, for everybody else on the team, it's like, okay, well, I've got to step up now. If PJ is doing it, I've got to do it. And it's a trickle down effect, and it leads to what you're seeing now for the Mavs. And I'll give you my one word: it's valid. What is this? These last 2 weeks for the Mavericks, for me, it's validation. Because we've talked about all offseason. We talked about at the beginning of the season how deep this team is and how, what that does for an NBA team when you have injuries, right? You've got players that can step up, and we were waiting to see it. We were waiting and waiting, and now you're seeing it. So it validates everything that Nico's done. Job's not finished. Mavs, have championship aspirations, of course, after losing last year in the finals. But it's validation for, even without Luka, the Mavericks struggle without Luka the last few years. And now you're talking about a stretch where he doesn't play for a week, and the Mavs, outside of Miami, have won 10 of their last 11 games. It's unbelievable. It's validation for what this roster is. It's validation for the coaching staff. It's validation for the leadership on this team with Kyrie and Clay and Luka as well. And the role players understanding their roles and knowing, everyone having that collective goal of, we want to win a title. We've got to all do this together, and we've got to understand what our roles are and what our job is, and let's go get it.
Yeah, I like that word, validation. That it really represents what the stretch is. And also, they still do have, a few more weeks, because like you said, I agree with, you really see where a team is or who they are after 2 months into the season. And I agree with that point. They're headed in the right direction, and we will see in a few weeks, because a lot of teams were soaring at the beginning of the season, like the Warriors and the Suns and other teams. And now look at them, and just like the Mavericks, everyone wrote them off after a week, a few weeks into the season. And now look at them. So I like that validation word, because it does describe this run. And I also want to just emphasize what you said on PJ Washington, his 3-point, just the quality of shots and the quality of his hard work, making those shots. Because, when you look at the numbers, he's shooting a career best 39.1% from three. And that's great, not only because he's making shots, but he's making them at the right time because
Mhm.
he's shooting a career low 3.8 shot attempts beyond the arc. So you're not only making, the shots when you take them, but you're also making the right decision because you see him a lot, because last year when he was with his team, he knew when he got the ball in the three, you shoot it. But, and he was rushing a lot of shots too. So this season, when you see him get the ball, he's really dissecting the defense.
Mhm.
Like he's not just shooting just to shoot, even if you're open for 1 second. Like he's really dissecting how is the closeout coming. And I don't really have to take this shot. I can dribble drive and go get a hook shot, which he's good at, or I can pass, which he's shown improvement, finding the open man. And then also I can, take the shot. If I'm feeling good, just let it fly. So I really like that from BJ as well.
Yeah, and look, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, right? Should the Mavs be worried, right? And what did I say? I said wait till December. Give it
Yep.
time.
That's
Give
why
it
I gave
time.
you credit. Yeah.
Let things sink in. It takes time, especially when you've got a bunch of new players that you're trying to integrate in your offense. Give it time. Let everyone kind of understand what's going on. Get within the flow of the game and the roster and the rotations. And now the Mavericks are reaping the benefits of that.
Yeah, they really are. And they need to keep doing it. Obviously, you have a Raptors team who's their record really doesn't show how good they are because they can beat you. And they've been finding their rhythm as well
Mhm.
lately. So you can't skip over that game to look forward to, this little rivalry that's building with the Thunder in the NBA Cup. Like you still have to take care of business with the Raptors tomorrow.
Yeah, and I don't think I think the Mavericks have enough veterans on their team, and they've got enough experience to not over. I think if this was years prior, we would say, okay, hey, that's a trap game. They may look forward to, and look, the Mavericks may come out flat, right, and lose that game. I mean, who knows? But I don't think it's going to be for a lack or overlooking an opponent. I don't think this is the team that does that. I think they're 100% locked in right now.
Yeah, and that's what's weird about this team in a good way, that they have a lot of veterans. And when I say veterans, that even means young veterans.
Hmm.
Because when a lot of people say veterans, oh, you're talking about Kyrie, Clay, maybe Maxi. No, I'm also talking about Luca. I'm talking about Gafford. I'm talking about PJ Washington. They might be 25, 26, but they played a lot of years in this league because they're not 4-year guys at college. Like they played a lot of years, seasons in this league. So I think the mentality that they have, and you can also tell that not only are they playing well together, they like each other. That
Yeah,
has something to do with it too.
absolutely.
All right, Shahnavaz. So one of the best things about the Mavericks right now is Luka's back. We talked about it last week. He was ramping up to return for this team, and not only is he back, like Luka is back to being Luka.
Hmm.
In that, and he looks to be in great shape. His shot is back. His defense, he wants everyone to talk about his defense because not only is he's not saying it, but he's happy to when people talk about his defense because he's so good offensively. But obviously, when you see him defensively, when he tries, he's actually a good defender. But the problem is he has, he's been doing so much on offense. His defense has laps, where it takes back and he gets lazy. And
Hmm.
but ever since he's back to last year because last year he was a good defender, and ever since he came back from his wrist injury, he's been really good. He's averaging a career high in steals per game, and also his low post defense and just his closeouts have been really good as well. It's only been 3 games, but it's great to see him implement himself into what the Mavericks are doing. So stats wise, he's averaging 31.3 points per game, 9.7 rebounds, 9 assists, and his shooting percentages 52.4 field goal percentage and 41.4 from three. Obviously, this is a 3-game stretch, but you talked about it. I talked about it, how good the role players have been. He's doing this with, in addition to that. So, Shahnavaz, what is your assessment on how Luka's been playing, specifically with the the rest of the team soaring while he was out?
It should quiet everyone down because everyone who said Luka's ball dominant, Luka's got to, it's hard to play with him. How many times have we heard that narrative that players don't want to play with Luka? It's hard to play with Luka. Kyrie showcased that last year that it's not. And now you look at this team, what they're doing to bring Luka back. I'll completely admit, I thought, I not necessarily that it would be a struggle, but I think it would take, in my mind, I thought it would take some time to kind of for him to come back and kind of figure out, okay, where do I? Obviously, he's the best player on the team. He's the best player on the floor. Almost in every single game that they play. But it's hard when you're that kind of a superstar to kind of change your game. And I think it's it's credit to him and it's credit to Kyrie and it's
Yeah.
credit because he listens to Kyrie. It's credit to the coaching staff and whoever else is in his ear because he is seamlessly fit right back in. Right, it's like that missing puzzle piece. And the best thing about it, Landon, is now he doesn't have to carry the load. I feel like he has that trust in his teammates, right? He knows that he can get the
Mm.
ball up. He doesn't have to worry about taking the last shot. You saw it against Memphis, him getting out of that double team and passing it to a wide open PJ Washington to close that game out. He's not calling for the ball. He's letting Spencer and Kyrie run that in transition to get those pull up threes that they're so good at, right? And Luka's loving it every single minute. And I think not only does it takes away from him having to do too much on the offensive end, which then feeds into him being a better defender. And you're absolutely right. He's been phenomenal since he's been back. He's been a great defender. And I think being able to have that energy and not having to worry about I've got to do everything on offense, if Kyrie's having a bad game, which we saw, right? Even if Kyrie's having a bad game, Luka knows, hey, I've got Quentin Grimes, I've got PJ, I've got Spencer, I've got Najee, Clay, the list goes on, where Luka knows that he can defer and he doesn't have to worry about taking over the full game. Being and the fact that he's still averaging 31 in the
That's
last 3 games
crazy.
and incredibly efficient too. You're not seeing 9 of 20, shooting nights, right? You're seeing very, very efficient, like you mentioned, over 50% shooting, over 40% from three. That's MVP. Those are MVP numbers right there. So I think it's unbelievable the fact that he's come back and it's been so seamless. And again, I've said it before, that should be terrifying for everybody else for the rest of the league because now even if you try to focus on him, he's not gonna try to hoist up some logo. He knows he can. He's got people around him that can make shots as well, and that he's got confidence in, and he's got trust in. And look, when push comes to shove, Luka's gonna have the ball in his hands, right? If it's a close game, he's gonna get the ball because he's gonna draw those defenders. But the fact now that Mavericks have built this roster around him where anybody can make a clutch shot is it's unbelievable. And I think for Luka, now the fact that he doesn't have to do too much offensively, you're gonna see a consistent defensive performance from him, which is all we've been asking. We know he's a good defender when he tries and when he's got the energy. Now he's going to be able to do that, and it's gonna pay dividends for this team.
I agree with you. I mean, the sky's the limit for this team. Obviously, they're going to have ups and downs. Like you said, they could lose to the Raptors. But the beauty is that when they lose, they still find ways to get better. And that could sound cliche, but that's real. That's reality of this team. We've seen this team hit lows so early in the season, and they didn't let it. They didn't let it stop them. The Utah game was just the cherry on top of a disastrous stretch, and
Mm-hmm.
that could have crumbled this team. That could have wilted the chemistry. That could have had everyone down. That could have had people thinking, "What's going on with this team? I mean, did I make the right decision to come here?" No, like all of them had a team meeting and they got their S together, and that's what the beauty of this is. And also, I don't like to say blessing in disguise when someone has an injury because you want players healthy, you want players on the court. But I think the positive out of Luka being out was him seeing his role players like really hoop, like
Yes.
because obviously he knows they're great players. Like he they have conversations with him, they have conversations with Kyrie who they're bringing in, but at the same time, like there's a difference of knowing that player's a good player, he'll fit with us, than actually seeing them hoop. Like Quentin Grimes is hooping.
Yeah.
Daniel Gafford is hooping. Obviously, he was on the team, but like he's being physical and he's not just catching lobs, like he's physically imposing his will on players. And then Najee and Clay's slowly finding his rhythm. But Spencer, man, like these players are really hooping. And I credit your point where, when you have players that can hoop like that, and that's the thing with Luka, he likes setting players up.
Hmm.
Kyrie will, that's what we've talked about this many times. Kyrie will push players to be better. Like he will say, no, you go take the ball and you go score, and I got you if you can. And Luka is like, no, let me set this up where you get wide open shots. So they're both great leaders in different ways. But when you see players on your team hooping, like that gives you the confidence in them in big games, not just against the Wizards, not just against the Blazers, but against the Grizzlies when you're playing good teams. And that's what you saw with this roster.
Yeah, and it's awesome to see because we saw them, when the Mavs made all these moves, I know you and I were super excited. And this goes back to even the trade deadline, right? Of getting Daniel Gafford, getting PJ Washington. And we saw what that did for this team last year, but it still felt like, and we saw it in the finals, right? It was still like, who else can take those threes, right? PJ wasn't the shooter he is now,
Yeah.
right? Gafford obviously isn't a 3-point shooter. The Mavericks were still lacking that. Now, Najee's improved his 3-point game, right? Even though he was struggling earlier, he's
Yeah.
turned it around in the last few weeks. Obviously, you have Klay Thompson, who now you don't have to rely on as like he's got to be the third guy, and Klay doesn't care about that either, right? Spencer can come off the bench and be the third guy. Quentin Grimes can come off the bench and be that third guy, but you've got capable shooters, capable
I
ball
like that.
handlers,
Yeah.
capable playmakers around your two superstars now, where it's so hard to defend. Like I don't, as a if I an opposing coach, I'm like, how do you even strategize against this? How do you scheme against a team like this where
Mhm.
you've had 8 players scoring double figures against the
Mhm.
Wizards? I mean, that's ridiculous.
Mhm.
You've had games where you've had 4 players score 20 points or more. And it just, and all efficient. You're not seeing all these guys take 30 shots a game. It's all efficient shots.
Yeah.
And it's got to be terrifying. Like every coach that goes up or that has to play the Mavericks, I'm like, what? How are you even going to stop this team?
Yeah.
They'll beat themselves. I mean, we saw it against Miami, right? That's a game that Dallas should have won. Against Utah, a game that Dallas should have won. They're not gonna be beat. They're gonna beat themselves.
Yeah. Eh, you can go down the list with their losses. I mean, they should have won a lot of them, and that's the beauty of a good team. Like, it's not about having three, big threes. It's about, as you've seen, in the last few years, it's about having like at least 2 stars, or in the case of the Nuggets in case of the Nuggets, like it's about having top guys, but you don't need a third guy. The third guy is who's hot that night. You got to have a lot of role players who can be a third guy. Like
And
you don't
look what's happening to the Nuggets now. Now that they've lost all their depth, what happens when Jokic is off the floor? They're a mess.
exactly, and that's the problem because when you look at the Nuggets, their third guy was having a great team. And now, like you said, they lost all those players to go elsewhere, and now they're looking a mess. But just look at the Celtics, how they won. Yeah, you have those top 2 guys, but who's their third best player? You don't know because it
Depends
depends
on
on
the
the
night.
night.
Yep.
And that's what you're seeing from the Mavericks. Last year, we are looking for a third guy to step up. This year, you're saying which third guy is going to step up because there's a lot of them. And that's the only way you can negate the Celtics and now the Cavs too, because the Cavs are the same way. And that's
Yeah.
how they play. Have a great team, but make sure when the game is on the line, you got 1 or 2 players who can make any shot that they want in their repertoire. So, Shahnavaz, last word. I like to put you on the spot, so I'm thinking of this question
Ooh.
on the fly. What is your thoughts on the NBA Cup, and what is your feelings on the Mavs odds to win the NBA Cup?
I think the odds are good. Look, I think the whole NBA Cup idea is just really to get more people to watch basketball in December when, you've got closing of the NFL season, you've got the college football playoff.
Yeah.
I think it's really just to drive engagement, but it's fun. It's just another thing. I don't know if, other than the cash prize, I don't really know if the players really care for it. The Mavericks have as good a chance as anybody. I mean, really the only team that I think that is really standing in their way is the Thunder.
And
I
that's the
think
first game.
that's the first game, so we'll find out. And they look, they've beat them before this year. They beat them in the playoffs last year. I don't think the Mavericks are scared of them, or I don't think the Mavericks have any qualms about, oh, can we beat the Thunder? I think they know that they can. I think that's gonna be BTV. That's gonna be one hell of a game for sure. But I definitely think the Mavericks can win that, and it'd be really cool. I mean, it'd be nice to have another trophy just for fun.
Yeah, and I'm excited for this matchup, because obviously things are building, but in reality, they're really not. Like, you're trying to see a rivalry between the Mavs and the Thunder, but Mavs have just really been whooping them in the last 5 or 6 games. I mean, this season, and then the playoffs. So, it's really, if I'm the Mavs, I'm not even worried. Like, just go take care of business. Like that, like you said, this season they have been beating them themselves. So like you got to go out there and just handle business. And now you can say, okay, now you have your big. You might not have Chet, but you got one of them, and I'm gonna beat you. So that's what I want to see. I want to see the Mavericks constantly just beat up on the Thunder, and so you can finally start seeing them get the recognition that they deserve, because that's what you and I mean, we're on the stand front of, when they're good, we praise them. When they're bad, we criticize them, and that's how it should be. And they're playing dominantly. If they won that Heat game, I mean, they would be on an 11-game winning streak. That's crazy to think about how the beginning of the season went.
Yeah,
So I would like to see them just not only win that game, but just also, you know, I would like to see the whole team in totality just dominate at their role, not just dominate the Thunder, because it's going to be a close game or lose. But I would just like to see everyone keep building in within their role. And that's what Jason Kidd said at the beginning of the season. That's how success is defined, when everybody knows their role and they played their best in that role.
and that's exactly what we're seeing right now.
It is. So Shahnavaz will, because we had to talk about the NBA Cup, because next week we could be, still talking about it, or we could be saying what went wrong in the NBA Cup. So we just want to, give praise to everyone tuning in to the episode. And then also you see our handles. Make sure y'all follow us online, and our thoughts and analysis during games, after games. And just make sure y'all tune in to next week's episode. We're really soaring on YouTube, especially the pod. So just keep liking, subscribing, and we appreciate y'all tuning in. Goodbye, everyone.